For many people like myself, physical media is a big part of what I enjoy. I mean, you can see behind me after all, it really is something important to many people. Most of what I do on this channel relates to physical media. So as a collector, it is a big part of my enjoyment of the hobby. However, all that seems like it's about to come to an end. A few days ago, Sony announced that as of January 2028, they will cease all disc production. I have no doubt you've already heard about it. Despite that, given the focus of this channel, there is no way that I could not talk about it. Firstly, let's talk about what Sony actually said. As consumer preferences and the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Following this date, new games will be available on the PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. This transition has no impact on games that are already released or will be released prior to January 2028 in disc format. This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends, as the general preference for the digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play physical games today. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choices as to where players prefer to purchase new games, whether that's at retailers or PlayStation Store. We remain committed to delivering a world-class gaming experience to our fans, and we thank you for your continued support. There is definitely a lot of damage control type language here. One point that's worthy of note is that they are trying to portray it as some kind of inevitability. The use of terms like consumer trends and prioritize make that clear. I'm definitely skeptical of that narrative. Companies often try to make something seem very different than it actually is. So I have to be clear and call it for what it is. Dishonesty. It just falls apart even under minor scrutiny. For example, the idea that the transition into digital only will help them more align closer with what their community wants does not make any sense. How exactly could the lack of physical games enhance digital releases? It's quite clear, I would say, that nothing would change in that regards. Games won't launch quicker, staff won't get paid more, job security won't improve, and that money is not going to project budgets. This generation, furthermore, has been more profitable for Sony than every other one combined. The financial incentive here is not actually about the costs of production themselves. I mean, the industry has thrived with the production of physical media anyway. Additionally, those releases are profitable anyways. Nintendo has made physical releases cost slightly more than digital, so why wasn't that the option chosen? Despite that, however, it is very easy to assert that it is about money. So, how is it about money? Let me tell you. When Sony sells a game through their store, they get a very large profit margin. Compared to a physical game, they actually get more of the money that way. They also get a cut of every single item sold on their store, which is around 30%. That is a key part of what has led to their record profits. Despite players going down since COVID-19, there's still been a lot of profit made through game sales and microtransactions. It really is their main revenue source for the PlayStation division. So the undeniable benefit for Sony is that they will make even more money. every single sale will have an increase in profit. The only true part of Sony's statement is that there is a genuine skew for most casual consumers to be all digital. I know quite a few people personally who have changed over the last 10 or so years as digital storefronts and downloads have improved. So the next question to ask is whether the increased profits from the smaller number of consumers who buy physically are enough to justify the backlash. I don't think they are. Of course, we will have some people who will genuinely boycott Sony because of it. Some people will reluctantly adapt to enjoy the games they want to play in the future. However, the profit isn't enough just for the extra margins they would get. Instead, it is about control. Currently, Sony has to take into account how much a game sells for in retail. Whilst consumers do like the convenience of digital games, they care about money more. If a game was on sale for £60, but you could buy it physically for £30, then most people would do that. There is an expectation that digital prices should mirror, at least when on sale, the physical prices. Otherwise, the value is not there at all for consumers. I personally think there should have been always cheaper, since you are getting less for your money, which is a license and not a product. So without that constraint, Sony are in total control over the price of games. That means that if they want to keep a game at £70 for 5 years, they absolutely can do. If they want the sale price to be £65 instead of £35, then that is what it is. Either you buy it for that price that Sony decides, or you don't get it at all. That is where the real financial incentive is. It is no secret that games are more expensive to make, especially AAA games. It's also no secret that businesses are chasing an ever-increasing profit. They chase that increasing number. Eventually, they always decide to compromise the experience for their customers in order to increase that profit. A good example of this is tiered subscriptions. Again, this is not news to anyone, but it definitely is unfortunate that Sony has decided to follow that route in such a decisive manner. So now that we have established the underlying motivation behind this change, I hope you can understand why I would go as far as to label it dishonest. However, I want to talk about the effects this will probably have on the medium as a whole. I've been glad to see plenty of backlash so far, and that people are making their voices heard. Even if Sony doesn't change their mind, hopefully Nintendo or Microsoft are paying attention to how consumers feel about it and will cater more effectively to the whole of their audience. I honestly have more hopes for Nintendo because of their focus on their Japanese audience. That audience very much still cares about physical novelties. When I went there 3 years ago, I definitely noticed it, and that is considering the fact that I was simply a visitor who'd never been there before. I might as well add my opinion here that since Sony shifted their PlayStation headquarters to the US from Japan, they have changed a lot, especially in regards to their relationship with consumers. It hasn't all been negative, of course, but regardless, I think it helped pave the way to these decisions. What is done at this point. One thing I am quite concerned about are game retailers. There are some fantastic online and physical retailers that do their best to sell games for really good prices. A dwindling supply will mean that many people will abstain from buying as many games, and that will mean that some retailers will have to try and focus on retro to survive, which is an extremely competitive market. It would be pretty fair to say that some businesses will probably close after January 2028, and that is a sad prospect. It isn't because the demand isn't there, it is. The backlash is proof of that. The problem is that Sony wants more money, and that leads to the scenario that we have today. I also want to briefly outline the comments people have made about ownership. When you buy a digital product like a film, book, or game, You get a license. You can use that as long as the service and the rights are available. Then that access is not guaranteed over time. I remember when Scott Pilgrim became unavailable for many years because of that. Thankfully, we have it back now, but there are countless titles where that will not be the case. A complete physical release is playable for as long as the hardware will allow it to be so. That is why there are so many people who prefer it. I do get that for some people that might not matter as much, although the option being there is certainly always better than it not being there. There are other aspects to having physical releases that people, such as myself, really enjoy. Those novelties make a substantial difference to my enjoyment of the hobby. It is definitely unfortunate that new releases will take that away from me and many others who enjoy those things too. There's also been plenty of speculation on how this will affect the current state of the used market for games. I would say something a little different than what a lot of people have said. I think that prices are going to increase, but the effects will focus more on the recent PlayStation consoles. The more retro systems are already increasing, but I would expect that after January 2028, PS5 and maybe even PS4 games will increase in value quite fast. Less people are likely to sell their games, and I would even say that is what it means that now would be the time to buy games. Maybe there will be a short-term increase in prices, but the more safe guess is that after production ceases, games will not become cheap and affordable as they usually would during a next generation transition. I wouldn't encourage any panic buying at the moment. What I have done personally is just to make a list of the games that I want to get, and I will make sure that I get all those physical copies that I need before January 2028. That is what I would encourage people to do. I think that until then you can still afford to wait, but I think that having a plan in place will help you to avoid any potential issues with a massive increase in price for used games. Now, I do want to mention some more positive things. I think that the homebrew communities are going to become important pillars moving forward. There is no secret that their work on the Vita models have helped make games more accessible. This is also the same with the PS3, 3DS, and many other consoles. It means that when stores close, specifically digital storefronts, and the ability to download games is lost, that there is a way around it. So I think that the work of these communities will help games remain accessible even after these digital services are again withdrawn in order to move customers over to newer hardware. As a result of this, I would take the opportunity to encourage people to mod their legacy consoles to help have that accessibility issues mitigated. I'm confident that these communities will continue to work on current consoles to make sure that games are archived and preserved, especially in the future, when this is something that a layman like myself won't be able to do anymore. The other thing for me is the fact that there are thankfully so many great physical games that already exist. It may be the end of new things, but it will also give us a chance to discover new media that we might not have done if we were focusing on the future releases. I really do hope that Nintendo does affirm their commitment in the future to continue first-party, complete physical releases. The last question remaining is about what am I going to do moving forward? Given the current reports that the PlayStation 6 will cost around $960 to make, and it may even rise more, depending on what is going on with the price of memory right now, I'm already bewildered, to be honest, about how much more it costs to get a PS5 now than it did almost 6 years ago. It seems like the next console could easily cost around £1,000. If that is the case, then I would have a lot of doubts. I would put money on the fact that AI will be a key focus on the new machine. If that is true, we probably won't get many meaningful upgrades, never mind the price. I actually originally bought a digital PS5 but later changed to a disc drive slim version because I'd realised just how important that option is to me. As things stand, I don't see how the next generation of PlayStation will be worth it. It will certainly be a hard sell for Sony, to be honest. I think I will probably still buy some games, if I am completely honest, but I will certainly buy a lot less. I will wait until the prices drop, and if they do not, then I will have to make some sacrifices on games I am looking forward to. I've never minded buying digital games, but I don't want to easily give into the way the industry is currently adapting at the moment. Things that need to change. People need to go over profits. That's not just us collectors, but also the wonderful people who work in the industry. All those talented people that design the physical releases we love so much will be forced out of their jobs in order to give someone who does not need it a bigger paycheck. That is honestly such a shame. I think though that the biggest thing I will do going forward is to make sure that I reward the physical releases in the industry for as long as I can. So what do you think? How are you going to react going forward? Please let me know in the comments. And of course, I'll catch you in the next one.